Welcome to Full Prefrontal, the show that exposes the mysteries of executive function. This podcast is a collection of conversations about the role of the prefrontal cortex, which impacts your focus, planning, problem-solving, emotional balance, and independence. So join us as we explore executive function and the science of learning. And now, here's your host, the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.
Welcome back to Full Prefrontal, exposing the mysteries of executive function. I'm your host, Sucheta Kamath, and I believe that we must live in your truth and in your passion and finding life to be a mission where you can find and create a pathway to success. The most important thing about that process, though, is to know what your goals are. And I love to think about enlightened self-interest goals versus selfish goals. And it is your executive function that allows you to pursue anything and everything with passion, persistence, and consistency. But if you don't have passion, maybe there's a pathway to discovering your own passion. So with that said, I am so excited to speak to a very, very special guest as I'm looking at the landscape of, I'm in education, so I look at the landscape of time as, fall till summer because school year begins. So now we are looking at 2024. Fall schools will open very soon. And I wanted to bring somebody very inspiring, an educator, an influencer, an encourager who can actually not just talk about how he lives in that space, but also maybe something we can pick up for ourselves so that the days we feel discouraged, defeated, there's something we can find that helps us pick ourselves together and move forward. So today I have Mickey Smith Jr. He is an educator extraordinaire, I would say. He is 2020 Grammy Music Educator Award recipient. He is a 7-time Teacher of the Year. Now, guys, I don't even know if you understand the significance of this, because to become one-time Teacher of the Year, you like all educators in the state have to be nominated by individual schools, then individual districts, then all pulled into one, and then to pick one is an enormous, inordinate task for people who are selecting, but he has been chosen 7 times. And he's the founder of Sound 180 Educators, and he also is a founder of Smith Enrichment and Solutions. He currently is an band director and at one of the schools in West Palm Beach, and where he teaches grades 4 to 12. I personally was honored to hear him give a keynote at the Georgia School Board Association talk. And you would be thinking, why do school board members need to hear an educator who walks into the room with his saxophone and inspires them? Well, you will soon know why we have him come and join us. So welcome, Mickey. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today, and I appreciate the invitation to be able to share and just share the space. I'm looking forward to this. This is quite the departure from what I normally get to do. Most of my days are spent with folks about the age of 8, if I'm lucky, all the way up to age 18. But not often do we get to talk about the nuts and the bolts, so to speak, that make up teaching. And I'm just honored to be here, and I thank you, Sucheta, for what you do, and just excited about this whole prefrontal concept that we're going to be talking about today.
And Mickey, the reason to even have you as an inspiring educator on this podcast, because our worlds overlap in many ways. So we both are in business of educating children to learn. And we veer from there. You go into finding your own way through music. And I do that by finding your own way, by learning how to learn, by learning about yourself. So the skills that I focus on are called executive function skills, which is how students, children, adolescents, and adults learn to self-manage by learning to create goals for oneself, create a plan, but most importantly, persist through passage of time, because the goals they have come up with are of significance to them. But more importantly, there are some goals that we must pursue, whether they are goals, they may not be our favorite goals. So such as I may love math, but I may hate science, or I don't like reading, but I love music. I'm in my band class. Children from K to 12 area do not have that choice. So it's called motivational mismatch. So my goal is to help educators understand how the children's brains work. And my goal is also to create something special that I have done through my platform, EXQ, to learn how to learn by learning about self as a learner and a thinker. So, for starters, I want to start by asking you some questions that I ask all my guests, which is about your own executive function skills. So, do you mind if I ask you that how you were as a child from K to 12 space as a learner and a thinker?
Okay, this is fun. I don't know that anybody has ever asked me that, and I say that way because I think we teach the way we were taught. I
Yes.
think a lot of how we teach is a reflection of the experience we had and how we learned. And it's so interesting to me that who I've been celebrated for, I don't know that I was celebrated as when I was little. For example, a lot of different factors went into this, but going into middle school, I was a C and D student. I
Hmm.
failing. Okay, because that to me, I love my kids, but we don't do the whole CD thing. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just not
Yes.
how we work. Not that my parents promoted those poor grades, but it was a series of different things. I grew up in a community that was actually the entire town was demolished, and they built a chemical plant on top of it. So before all that happened, they closed the school. I had to go to a neighboring town. I found out later that my vision was prohibiting me from learning properly. I didn't know I needed glasses.
Literally, the vision.
Yeah, so I needed glasses. I wasn't aware of that. And because I changed schools, there were some things that they knew at that school and a certain things that they had covered that I hadn't covered yet. So all these created the perfect storm for me to be seen as a poor student, right? So I found my report card when I recently moved from Louisiana to Florida. And as I looked at it, it said C's and D's, but at the bottom of the report card, it had behavior, I guess for lack of a better word, behavior grades. O for outstanding, for those that may not remember those days or whatever.
Oh,
S for satisfactory, and then N for not satisfactory. And when you were a kid, you didn't want an N. That was a bad thing. So when I look at the report card, it says he's disruptive. He talks too much in class. N.
wow.
They said he's distracted. He draws too much in class. N. He's just doesn't have it. He's making too much noise. He's tapping on things, and he's disruptive. N. Well, long story short, I ran into some sound adults in my life after having those poor grades. Folks like my geography teacher, Mr. Ancelet, and he helped put me in positions to, I guess, now that I look back on it, begin to exercise that executive function. I got to participate in what they call it the geography bee, like it's like the spelling bee.
Oh,
So this was the first time ever I had to stand on a stage and be able to speak and to share and to think and to connect and to compete in that way academically that I just automatically did athletically, but I'd never done in a class setting. That pathway was the first time I had ever went on to attend a college because the state geography bee was at Louisiana State University. First time anybody in my family had ever stepped foot on a college. So I'm telling you all that because after coming to middle school as a C and D student, 3 years later, I was student of the year. 4 years later, I was the first male in my family to graduate from college, first in my family to go to college, first to graduate from college, and I hold multiple degrees, and I've been awarded and acclaimed. And now, fast forward, the ironic part is I get paid as a public speaker to talk too much. I get paid as an award-winning illustrator and author to draw too much. I get paid as a musician, Grammy Award winning music educator, to make too much noise. So it's so funny that the thing that was perceived as my deficiency was actually my destiny. It was my superpower in disguise. And that lesson hasn't been lost on me when I go into a classroom. I believe that it's so important not only to teach the subject matter, but to teach the student that they matter, and our ability to do more than just teach, but to reach, to do more than just instruct, but to inspire. That's the game changer, not just for the student, but for the teacher as well, because it allows both student and teacher to walk in this pathway of significance that allows us to do something more than just do, but to be. Because at the end of the day, I think there's a reason we're called human beings and not human doings. So this idea of executive function, this idea of management, self-management is so important because I think what music has done for me, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Music for me is a powerful vehicle that I feel teaches self-leadership. And that's what I cast it as. So the goal of my classroom is to not be banned as usual. The goal of my classroom is to not have my students in such a way, and I have a story I'll share with you about this later if you help me remember.
No, go ahead. Yes, I'll remember it.
I don't want my students to just be able to play the song that I taught. I want them to have so much executive function that goes beyond just the literacy of the music, but the understanding of who they are in the music and what we're doing and how it's so much more than just a fingering or a note or a position, but that it's an opportunity for communication and a challenge for us to actually know who we are so that the music can speak to that. So this is why, like I said, this is why I'm so excited about this idea because, again, for me, band is more than music. It's an opportunity.
I think you said it. Now I'm going to say it. This can go in so many directions, and my brain is just bursting with ideas and exciting things to get you to share and talk about. So I do want you to tell me the story about your student. I'm going to quickly make this connection between your journey, and I think the reason I even ask is to be really, really hopeful that every audience member, may they be psychologists or parents or educators or principals or superintendents, I want them to hear this, because I will tell you, Mickey, 99% of people who I interview who are world-renowned experts in their domain of expertise, and they talk about their executive function as I did not know anything about myself.
Yeah.
Or other people knew more about who I potentially could be than I did. And many students, particularly those who went through K to 12 journey, feeling bad or being treated as not most competent because the way they behaved or responded to opportunity of learning, still came to the top. But they may or may not feel good about themselves. And for some, it was really arduous because they gave up. And I think we have such a responsibility to really make sure that every child has an opportunity to understand that they are the agents of their destiny. And so I'm very excited to ask you the next question. So one of the things that I really, you have such an inspiring story about going into education, but can you tell us a little bit about your worldview as to what makes an educator?
Well, I truly feel that we're all teachers. Everybody's a teacher. Everybody has that capacity for information to come through them for the benefit of others. But my personal definition of an educator is so much more. I think an educator is someone who not only gives information, but gives a sense of value, not only to the information that they're sharing, but to the individual that's receiving it. And that goes beyond just being a teacher. I believe that an educator at its best is an opportunity to be a sound adult. And I feel like every child is just one sound adult away from discovering what I call their own sound. So your sound is that unique personal significance that you carry. It's the thing that makes you uniquely you. It's like it's as singular as the thumbprint you possess, and oftentimes it's overlooked and undervalued. Sometimes people will see somebody that they think is amazing, and they fail to see, as you mentioned, the amazing that resides in them. And the thing is, amazing is not amazing. Amazing is how it is perceived or received by others. Because I've met a lot of what you would call celebrities. individuals who we see on TV. And sometimes I still pinch myself. I'm like, I can't believe I was actually in the room with this person or had this conversation. And when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, more times than not, they're just people like you and I. And when I say that, of
Most
course,
often.
yeah, well, I say that because, of course, everybody is just people, but their mindset, well, most often they just realize, that they're just as frail. They're just as oftentimes insecure. They're oftentimes just as, just lacking in confidence sometimes in certain areas as the next person. But I think some of the keys to their superstardom is the fact that they were able to identify, or someone was able to identify their gift and their passion and to intersect it in such a way that it was able to be promoted and shared in a way that the general population would see it and say, wow. But the cool thing is we all have a wow factor. It just lies dormant for far too many of us. And what I believe a great educator can do, a great educator like Mr. Anselette can say, hey, you need to be in the geography bee. Not understanding that it was never really about geography. It was about me as an individual,
Love that.
who I could be, and most importantly, where I could go in this thing called life. And once you give a child in particular, but anyone, give a child a taste of success and significance and possibility, now you give them what I feel is a compelling future. It's that carrot in front of them
Wow.
that allows them to keep on going, because life for no one is perfect, but it can be purposed. I don't plan out my day. I put purpose in my day each and every day. And I feel like the educators that have been in my life have been those sound adults that have allowed me the space, the opportunity, and the agency to be on stages, to be on platforms, to make those sounds, to make those mistakes, to make those opportunities that allowed me to explore who I could be and how I could execute in a way that gave me not only, watch this, not just confidence, but competence. And the cool thing is, once you get the competence, one thing I've seen in the classroom, if I give a kid a sense of competence, then automatically they get more confidence. And when they get more confidence, they get hungry, they get a taste for success, and they want more competence. And before you know it, people are like, why do they work so hard for you? Because they're not working for me. They're working
Yes.
for themselves. They finally bought into the idea that I am loved, I am valued, and I am wanted. And I do carry a level of significance in this thing called music. So it's not really about the art form as much as it's about the heart form, because that's what we're forming. That heart for competency and for confidence that will translate into this beautiful thing called perseverance.
Oh my goodness. So brilliant. Have you considered another career? Become a preacher?
Amen.
Uh,
Amen.
I mean, I think so. I want to kind of attend to two things, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. I love your definition. So you're really talking about educator has a responsibility to unveil that this path, whatever we are doing now, is nothing to do about now.
Yeah.
It's going someplace, and that value, the sense of value that they offer, maybe there's not enough unveiling of that may be happening from all parts of the child's experience. So I love that. So you're also really talking about this infinite responsibility of becoming an encourager. You're a lifelong encourager when it comes to interacting. And there's a Rogers was a psychologist, very famous psychologist, and he uses this term called charismatic adult. And the definition of a charismatic adult is from someone a child draws strength. And I just love that definition. So, how can you become the presence in a child's life from whom the child draws strength? So, imagine that person, right?
Yeah.
Nobody says, like, can you draw knowledge? No,
Yes.
it's you are drawing strength from that person. That means I know I am a something, I just don't know, but you believe in me and my potential makes me feel I have the courage to stand in myself.
Yeah.
I think that's that definition of charismatic adult. And Mickey, I don't know if you're familiar with this research, but now for children with a very high ACE score, which is adverse childhood experiences, which is called ACE, I'm sure you know. And there's a longitudinal studies done with a very high score, which is severe childhood trauma, more than 6 or 8 values. And those children who had one adult, that's all they needed, a charismatic adult, their life trajectory changed dramatically. And so to me, I take that role and responsibility so seriously when I encounter children. Sounds like you do too. So I would love to know a little bit about where do you draw strength to become strength for children?
Well, drawing strength for me is I think the key, because I think far too many of us go out in our own strength. And the truth of the matter is, my personal opinion is, if you're not buying into, if you're not looking into, if you're not connected into something bigger than yourself, then you are an exhaustible resource. Okay. You're not inexhaustible. I mean, I hate to break it to the listeners out there. Nobody's getting out of this thing called life alive. Okay.
No.
I mean, it's a fact. 10 out of 10
Do you
of
know
us.
birth is a life sentence? Did you hear this?
I like that. Birth is a life sentence. It's true. But it's so amazing to me when people believe that they can do things in and of their own strength only forever. And yes, there are some seasons where, you have to walk a lonely road, maybe for a spell, for a season. But I think the biggest thing is, to be of value to someone else, we have to ask ourselves, where are we drawing our strength from? I guess for me, before I answer that, it goes back to who we are for the children. You talked about that charismatic adult. And then how do we become that person that someone draws strength from? I think I think modern day teaching is relationship based teaching. And I think if we understand that, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily their friends. It's so funny because my students, when they leave me, they send me beautiful messages. Oh, we love you, Mr. Smith. And I know they mean it. But there's a part of me that kind of laughs inside, because my my recollection of our first meetings are oftentimes anything but loving, because I have a structure, and there's a rigor to what we do in our class. And people don't always, everybody loves band the first week. And then when they find out, oh wow, there's a little work behind this. And boy, he has a standard he holds, right? After a while, we're like, I don't know if we like this Mr. Smith guy, right? But as time goes on, they begin to understand that I'm not trying to, as I like to say, I'm not trying to rub them the wrong way. I'm just polishing them up so they shine. And they understand that the rigor is actually that grind and that grit that allows them to illuminate and shine in a way, and to be polished in a way that they could have never done in and of themselves. And how do I get kids to do this? It starts with trust. See, trust is the door that leads to relationship.
Wow. Yeah.
Relationship is the door that leads to influence. And influence then opens up a door to instruction. But if we lead with instruction, that's called a know it all. I've done it both ways. I've had great information. It doesn't matter how pristine or how beautiful the information is, the kids don't care. The kids won't care how much you know until they know first that you care about them. And that's why I say modern day teaching is relationship based teaching. We can't put instruction before the individual. We can't put curriculum in front of the kids. We have to lead as a trusted, sound adult. So, to answer your question, where do I find my passion? Oftentimes, it's in the form of other sound, trusted adults in my life, relationships that pour into me, whether it's my wife, whether it's my kids, whether it's my circle, my sound circle of individuals. I have a lot of acquaintances, I have a lot of connections, but I have just a handful of friends. But those friends are like precious gems to me, because it's so funny. They always know just when to call, it seems. They're always available. And I believe in this arduous journey called life, It's kind of like Cheers back in the day. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. We know the song back in the day, and that's where the strength comes from. Do we have those relationships that we can rely on, that we can trust, that helps us then to be the trusted individual? And then do we have a belief system? Do we have something that inspires us and gives us that broader vision of who we are so that we can, as I like to say, see yourself beyond yourself?
All right. So you I think just the pathway. I love that you came back, that not just thinking about the idea of a charismatic adult from whom we draw strength. A teacher cannot do that until the teacher actually has, I like to use my words of inspired life, like those who stay in the space of living an inspired life. And I'll weave in some neuroscience here, that one of the most healing emotion is the a sense of awe.
Hmm.
And awe is an emotion where you feel you're minuscule. Something is way bigger and more meaningful and far more significant than you. And when we experience that emotion on a daily basis, those people are able to activate their influence without having any attachment to taking ownership of that influence. So you're liberating people who receive the gifts from you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not about trying to affect people,
Yeah.
or trying to make people into subservient behavior or lean in at my feet kind of thing. There's a genuine feeling of collaboration, that when I am the best I can be, because I draw strength from something so much bigger than me, that my presence becomes an inspiration to you, and you're able to draw that strength from everywhere to live in your most inspired space. Do you understand?
Look,
that to me is the
that's it.
profound bidirectional relationship between teacher and student.
I'm going to say something. It sounds like for shock value, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. This may cause a stir and an uproar, but hear me out. Suchita, you are attractive. Now, here's what I mean by this. You are beautiful. You are beautiful, but you're also attractive. Meaning, when we want to see something, it's important that we be the thing we want to see, because the more you become it, the more you attract that. And oftentimes when we find things in our life that are coming up over and over again, good or bad, there's oftentimes a chance that it's because we are that magnet, so to speak, right? I said it earlier, we teach the way we were taught.
So true.
Our experience creates the experience that we have now, to the point of the idea of seeing something bigger than yourself. I experienced that recently. Sometimes something that looks attractive from a beautiful standpoint, visually, can be anything but for the individual who's experiencing it. For example, if somebody saw us when we moved from Louisiana, the place we moved to is beautiful. But guess what? It wasn't home. And there's no amount of beauty that can substitute for the familiarity that is home and relationships and those things that are not replaceable, right? So there were days where, wow, I'm in this new place and technically it's wonderful, but man, sometimes people have a hard time understanding what I'm saying. I have to be very cognizant about how I speak, because in Louisiana, I could let my voice relax a little bit, but here I got to speak the King's English, right?
Yes.
All
You're
right,
in West Palm Beach, baby.
got to speak to West Palm Beach, and maybe there's certain comfort foods I enjoyed, but that seasoning is not here. I miss my Louisiana. Or the kids said yes ma'am and no ma'am and yes sir and no sir, and there are other little quirks and little things that I saw as beautiful, but now is maybe deemed disrespectful, and now I have to figure out how to navigate this. So I'm saying all these things because, as a person that's new to a place, these little micro traumas, so to speak, can build up to the point where you begin to feel overwhelmed. So how do you continue to be Mr. Smith when you feel anything but? I found out something. I found out I like the beach. See, I can't really swim well. I've never
Oh,
been a
really?
water person, but I love the beach. I started going there with great frequency because I discovered something amazing. When you go to the beach, for me personally, when I go to the beach, it's so big
Ah, yes.
that whatever problem I brought to the ocean seems insignificant when I look at the ocean. And it ain't even the biggest ocean. My goodness, don't let me get to the Pacific. I can do anything, right? Right? We're just looking at the Atlantic, right? So
Yes.
so that idea of putting your sights, putting your perspective on something bigger than yourself is the greatest fuel for being phenomenal for someone else. Because once I left the beach, I knew I could. Whatever that is, I knew I could. And I was able to bring that attractive energy back into the classroom. And I was able to attract children and draw children because, again, I am a band director, which means my job is predicated upon recruitment and retention. So I have to be rigorous, but I also have to be relatable to the point
Yes.
where kids want to stay engaged. And that balancing act is as much about the content as it is about the content holder and giver, which is me.
Oh, wow. So I think here's the another beautiful thing that you touched upon is without compromising the rigor, you can still be relatable.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel kids who are growing up in the TikTok version of the world, they look at educators as entertainers.
Yeah.
And if you're not entertainer, you're not important or what you offer is not important. And teachers feel very discouraged by that calculation they feel that the students may have in their head, but I always remind them that they may be drawn to one shiny object, but they also need stability, and they're also drawn to stability. So your knowledge and your presence can be stability, so do not expect less.
Yeah.
And I think this expecting less is also a teachers are victimized by their own lack of satisfactory reciprocity from a student. And I think that's where we need to kind of really double down and not give up. Rigor and relatability go hand in hand. Love
Yeah.
it.
I always like to say, discipline is not the enemy of enthusiasm. Like we
Yes.
still have, matter of fact, it's boundaries that create freedom. Like when I have these boundaries, it creates a safe space and it also promotes a spirit of expectation. It's like your favorite show, Friends comes on and you know exactly when to clap on the theme song, or you hear that sound. It's like, oh, the Tonight Show came on. Let's get ready. Every great show has a very predictable start. It needs to be predictable because we like patterns. We love patterns.
So
We love
true.
predictability, but we don't want to do it ad nauseum. But we have to give children these hooks, which is why music now is so repetitive, almost to a fault now, because they figured it out. Okay. They figured out the hooks. And I believe that entertainment from an educator can be one of those viable hooks, but it cannot be a sustainable diet of hooks. There's a fish place across the street from where I'm at called Hooks. Okay, and that's cool. That's about as sustaining as I'm gonna do with hooks. I'm not gonna make a diet of hooks, right? So watch this. I say that for this reason. Those hooks, that entertainment, that is a level of motivation that is necessary for engagement in a classroom. But it's so important that educators understand that motivation gets you started, but it's habits that keep you going. It's systems that help you to keep on going. It's routines, it's rituals that keep you going. Things that can, in essence, become sustainable by the learner themselves. Because ultimately, it's like my son. Okay, when he was little, I'll never forget, I had to call my boss and tell her I was going to be substantially late to school that day, which was odd because I am the dude that is usually 2 hours early to work every day. And that's another story for another day. We talk about pouring in, priming our day, getting us ready. So I usually get to work super early. So she was very surprised to hear me say, "Hey, I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably gonna be about 30 minutes late to school today." She said, "Is everything okay?" I said, "Yes, something amazing had happened, and I have to be present for it." See, my maybe he was 3 or 4 year old at the time son decided he could tie his shoe. Now, what children don't realize is it never occurs to them that as parents, we pretty much see everything before they show us, right? Especially when they're little like that. But in his mind, all those weeks of him practicing the shoe tying in our presence, we didn't see that. He thought he was showing me that for the first time. So when he came to the kitchen, he said, "Dad, watch, I can tie my shoe." And he began to tie the shoe the slowest any human has tied a shoe before. I said, "Yeah, we're going to be here for a while." And then watch this. He got to the end and he dropped the knot and he messed it up. He said, "I'm going to have to start back over." That's when I called my boss. I called the administrator. I said, "I'm going to be late." So why am I telling you that? Because that moment obviously was very important. It was significant. I needed him to know that who he was and what he was doing was important enough for me to stop. But it was also selfish on my point because I understood from teaching and watching kids grow up that I couldn't rush through this because there was going to come a day where he wouldn't be interested in me seeing him tie his shoe. There would come a day where there may be a few hours go by and I don't even see him. He may not even want to talk. So for him to, as a teenager, they get too cool for school and for dad. So while I had this precious moment of him tying his shoe, I made sure I stayed present. Now watch this. I would tie his shoe, but as a parent, my hope is that, these moments change. See, when he's 4 and he comes up to me and says, "Dad, can you tie my shoe?" That's beautiful. If that dude is 44, "Hey, Dad, tie my shoe," we got a problem. So any parent will tell you the objective, the hope is eventually for them to have that ability, for them to have that autonomy to do things on their own. And I believe when we create these routines, these rituals, these systems, we help them create mental rubrics that they can use as tools and even toolboxes that they can draw from so that, yes, it is cool when I can show a kid how to do something on the instrument. But the coolest thing is when they can come back to me and show me that they know how to do it and that they've even learned something else and they can show others as well.
I think and this is something such a fascinating juxtaposition that we think inspiration means the wow factor. But the wow factor is backed up with a nuance of absolute tedium. My son, who is doing his doctorate in clinical psychology, and he starts his externship, which is very long hours of clinical work. He will have his own, and his specialty is going to be children. Adolescent and young adults with anxiety, stress, and suicidal ideation. And so he had his first day yesterday, and he spent 8 hours of orientation, and he says that was the most boring part of the day. But he's going to see he was going to see clients the next day. And so I actually wrote to him, texted him, and I actually said that no, entree to all good work is through doors of doldrum of mundane. So I think that we disvalue or think it is interfering with success when I have to do routines. And people don't understand that routine actually establishes the groundwork for creative leaps. But without routine, there's no creative leap. If you only do creative leaps, then there's no accomplishment, because these are ideas. Execution always comes down to routine. You're routinizing your actions, right?
Yeah. And one more thing on that too, and I love that. I love that concept that the wow factor is the nuance. It's the parts, that no one sees, it's the parts that no one knows, it's the work that doesn't always show. That's the thing that's so easy to discount and discredit. Mentally, we say, "Oh, that's nothing." But the crazy thing is, so much, in my case, so much of teaching has no thing to do with teaching. I hate how people say nothing because that's too casual. No thing to do with it,
Yes, I
right?
love that. Tell us more.
Because if you come into my classroom, you'll see that a big part of our success has no thing to do with music.
Wow.
For example, I have this thing I call First Days Lasting Ways. It's heavily based upon concepts that were not music education concepts, but inspiration I drew from this amazing classroom management guru who recently passed away, Dr. Harry Wong. Okay. And Dr. Wong had a book that I didn't really appreciate coming out of college. I didn't understand the value of it because without that experience and without that connection with experts, right, it just looked like a collection of just random information thrown into this book. But it was anything but. But I didn't understand that until my first year of teaching, which, by the way, we had two twisted sisters that visited us that year, Katrina and Rita, the hurricanes. That's my first year of
Oh,
teaching. We were
no
displaced
way.
until about second week of November, right? We went to school for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think, and then we were out of school. We were told we could not live in the county, the parish, because I'm in Louisiana, until November. We were gone. That's how bad the devastation was in
Oh my
Hurricane Rita.
goodness.
So when I came back, needless to say, I'm a new teacher. I've just faced one of the country's worst natural disasters. People are displaced like you wouldn't believe and I'm struggling. And something said, go back on your shelf and look at that book again. So I went back on the shelf. I looked at that book again, and I went back, and for the first time, I saw the value of it. I saw the value, and fast forward, I started taking those concepts and making them uniquely mine because he didn't have anything in place that necessarily fit or looked like my classroom, but I could see the potential of it. When I tell you, watch this. I wasn't even planning on this. It's worked out so good. I just happen to have this here. Fast forward, I get a call get an email from a gentleman. He says, I love your work. This is like, it's got to be like almost 15 years later. He says, tell me more about it. And I tell him about it. And I'm like, da 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 da. He says, I'd like to know more. Harry. I'm like, Harry? I'm like, no way. And I scroll back up and I looked at like the letterhead, how they have on the signature on the email. It is Harry Wong, the classroom management guru. And I'm like, this is crazy. So he and I begin to have correspondence, about different ideas and such, to the point where now for his latest book, if you look on the front cover, you'll see this funny looking guy in a red
What?
jacket. Pretty
Okay,
good for a
folks,
guy.
we have a YouTube channel and Mickey is showing actually the book and he is on the front page of Harry Wong's book. So incredible, full
it makes
circle.
it makes you want to pinch yourself, because the ironic part is he's calling me, asking me for influence and ideas, and I'm like, this is crazy. I stole everything from you, type deal. And that's one of Harry Wong's things. I steal everything, right? And but
Well, that goes to show that there's no original idea,
yeah, there's nothing
but
new.
it is how you deliver it. So you
Exactly.
delivered in the most profound new ways. Yes.
And I tell you, I've had people come to my classroom and they're expecting that wow factor. Musically, again, oftentimes it's music educators. Ironically, it's the core teachers that often find the most value, but the music people come in, and I think they begin with the end in mind. They're looking for this musical thing that just lights the room on fire, and what they see is teaching that's by design and not by default. They see outcomes that are a result of not happenstance but habit stacks. Small things done well stacked on top of each other over time. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it can look like that mundane dundrum, like you said. That's like, this
Yes.
guy is dumb. But the fact of the matter is, it's my class operates on what I call in my first days lasting ways system, our GPS for success.
Wow.
And the GPS is guidelines, procedures, and systems.
Hmm.
And again, these guidelines, procedures, and systems take the place of rules. I don't really have rules in my classroom. I just have very specific ways of being and doing that then provides agency for a kid who doesn't know anything about music, but every day leaves like it's a Wednesday, WINS. They get a win every day because they never leave feeling solely like an amateur. They leave with this feeling of accomplishment. Even if I can't play the song the first day, wow, mom, I came in and I got set up in record time. I learned how to sit correctly. I learned what set means. Secret, do
Hmm.
you know what set means?
Not in music,
In
no?
music, they gave us this big book, probably about the size of the one I just showed you, of how to execute posture and all the degree points and all this kind of stuff. Head over the shoulders, shoulders directly over the hips, and make sure the spine is at this angle, and make sure 90-degree angle with the knees and all this stuff. Blah 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 blah. A semester of that, but it's like the game telephone. If I were to spew all that out to a kid, again, we're dealing with the music mafia, age 8. Okay, if I tell them how to do something, the likelihood that they're all going to do it in the way that I need them to for their success is slim to none. Just like the telephone game. By the time it gets to the 15th or 30th person, it's totally different. And in my classes, I may have 60 kids in the class. So we have to have something that is very reflective of the world they live in. It has to be Snapchatable. It has to be Instagrammable. It has to be TikTokable. It has to be 40 seconds or less. It has to be 40 characters or less. It has to be bite-sized so it can be fun-sized learning. So I can't give them that academic demonstration and explanation of posture. I'll have to say something like, first, you have to make sure that you're sitting nice and tall, almost like you have a string in your spine. Whoop, and I'm a puppet. I just pulled you up. And I even do the little sounds, even with the older ones. They love it. They pretend they don't, but they love it. Next thing you know, they're doing this to themselves. But I've given them a visual to where they can take this really vague or abstract concept and put some concrete nature to it. Then I tell them you have to have soft shoulders. You have to make sure your shoulders relax. Why? Because you don't want to be tense. See, sometimes we say things to kids and they don't have any experience to line up with it. So I'll say things like soft shoulders. And then I'll go back and explain soft shoulders means to relax your shoulders because we don't want tension. Tension is the enemy of success. Anything you try to do successfully, you can't really do it tense. Then I'll tell them you got to make sure that your shoulder blades meet in the back so that your chest is out, so that we open up the diaphragm that lies even below. We want to bellow like an accordion. We want to be able to open up and fill up like a balloon. And we can only do that if we're not crunched or scrunched. I don't even know if that's a word, but I tell them crunched or scrunched. We want to make sure we pull the shoulder blades back so you look like Superman, Superwoman, a superhero because you're about to do a super work. And then make sure that your feet are flat on the floor so you can support the weight of what you're doing. Now, you would think that that's a good explanation for this thing called set. But again, think about the game telephone. What's the likelihood that the kids can say it exactly the way I just said it, verbatim, from 1 to 62? Slim to none. So I have to then break it down even farther and say something like, first you gotta sit tall, let your shoulders fall. Make a meet in the back and put your feet down flat. You gotta sit tall, let your shoulders fall. Make a meet in the back and put your feet down. First you gotta sit tall, let your shoulders fall. Make a meet in the back and put your feet down flat. You gotta sit tall, let your shoulders fall. Make a meet in the back and put your feet down flat. Pop quiz. First you have to do what? Sit
Tall.
Let your shoulders
Fall.
Make your shoulders meet in the
Back.
and put your feet down.
Flat.
And the crazy thing is, I never told you to learn.
No.
I never told you to listen. But by making it engageable, so to speak, and making it bite-sized, we made it what? Fun-sized. Why is that important? Because the chocolate industry figured that out decades ago. If they sell you a king-size bar, you'll only buy one, and you'll feel guilty after you eat it all. But if they sell you a bag full of little bite-sized, you'll eat them, and they're small. You'll finish the bag and go, well, it was small. I'll get another one. And before you know it, you've eaten the whole bag. You're going back for another bag because we made it fun size. That's the secret in teaching today's kid. We have to present it in such a way where they can take it and they can make it bite-sized and tasty for them.
Wow, this is going to be so inspiring, right? As people, all the educators, parents alike, are at the threshold of entering the new year. I cannot let you go without hearing you play music.
Oh, Lord.
May I please request something so that your beautiful sound just so our ears can soak it in?
Well, I have to apologize because you caught
Oh, you don't
me.
have it.
The horns are in the shop. They're getting maintenance. They're getting beautified. We all need maintenance. We all have to be refurbished every year, and the horns are no different.
As we wrap this interview, I could keep you.
I will say this: if folks want the music, it's never too far away. You can go to the website, MickeySmithJr.com, and there's a multitude of music on there. You can go to the Keep On Going store because that's what we're all about in this season, giving you the strategies, giving you the tools, and equipping you with the encouragement to help you not only see your sound, but to keep on going in the process because your significance opens up the door to your resilience. And it's things like the message that we've shared here and the music that goes a long way in helping keeping people encouraged. And of course, if I'm traveling, I come to your school, you always know the horns will be refurbished. We get them ready for the tour. We got the tour coming up. We're about to do the Educator Encouragement Tour. So we got about a 20-city tour. I'm going to school districts across this country, sharing a motivational mixture of that music and message through keynotes and concerts we call the Keep On Going Educator Encouragement Tour. And we're excited about it. But you can find out more on the website, MickeySmithJr.com.
And we will link all that information in our show notes. So definitely please follow up. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have children, please get his children's book. And then finally, as Mickey said, the sound, I'm just very unfortunate for us that we are not going to get to hear.
But you know what?
Next time. There's never no next time. So as I let you go, tell us 3 books, if you have recommendations for our audience that have influenced your worldview.
Yeah, there's a couple that I'm going to give you 2 plus 1 because I'm in a weird season right now, a great season. I'm finishing the completion of my book, which is going to be titled Keep On Going. So if you can understand,
we will link that to the show notes also.
So that's been, and it'll be out very, very soon. But we're putting the final touches on it. And so a lot of my focus book-wise has been on the completion of the creation of that book. But recently I read a book. It's not a fairly new book, but it's new to me. It's called Relentless by Tim Grover. And he was Kobe Bryant's personal trainer as well as Michael Jordan's personal trainer. And he talks about just some incredible mindsets and his perspective on not athletics, but the approach of life and skill and being the best version of you. It's just been something that really, really spoke to me. So that was a very interesting read, definitely outside of my norm, my scope. And then recently, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Furtick entitled Do the New You. And that one is one that my wife and I have been reading together. And it's been a very good read as well. And of course, like I said before, a lot of my attention has been on the upcoming book from maybe a little less known author by the name of Mickey Smith Jr. entitled Keep On Going.
Who's going to become very quickly well known all around the globe. So with that, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. As you know, these are very, very vital conversations we have with experts. But most importantly, how can we create a pathway for success for ourselves? And as we are tasked to really lead our children to find their inner potential and as they also begin to trust you are the charismatic adult in their lives from whom they draw strength. So thank you, Mickey. I have so much love and reverence for who you are to our children and what you have been with me. I have learned so much, and maybe just this magic will rub on my fingers and I will play at least sitar if I pick it up.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Full Prefrontal, exposing the mysteries of executive function. To contact your host, Sucheta Kamath, and learn more about her work on improving executive function, visit her website at exqinfiniteknowhow.com. That's www.exqinfiniteknowhow.com. Tune in next week for another informative episode of Full Prefrontal, hosted by the founder of EXQ, Sucheta Kamath.